Today's sponsor is TechVisions, providing high-quality touchscreen solutions to the marketplace for almost 3 decades. Visit them at techvisions.com.
Aerospace and defense manufacturing.
Machines and automation.
Additive manufacturing.
Smart manufacturing.
The global manufacturing economy.
Welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals, powered by SME. From the design screen to the shop floor to final assembly, we drive the conversation about making manufacturing smarter by connecting people who are passionate about manufacturing.
Hello, and welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals. I'm your host, Amy Bryson, contributing lead editor of Smart Manufacturing Magazine. Today we'll be talking about how industrial touchscreens are helping manufacturers of all sizes achieve smart manufacturing success. And my guest today is Nick Christie, and Nick is VP of East Coast Operations for touchscreen company TechVisions, which he joined in 2000. And by 2010, TechVisions had a division focusing strictly on the industrial market. Since then, TechVisions has helped countless manufacturing facilities and small shops automate using touchscreen computers, which is a really great topic for us to explore today as we talk about all sorts of solutions and processes that can help small and mid and OEM manufacturers modernize their shops and automate and contribute to their smart manufacturing journeys. So thank you for joining us, Nick, and I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you so much, Amy. Glad to be here.
Wonderful. And before we jump in, can you give our audience just a bit more background about you and your journey and what brought you to TechVisions and all the things that you and your team over there are doing?
Early on in my career, it came to my attention that touchscreens just might be the wave of the future. And now, keep in mind, this was shortly after the PC came out. So I've been around for quite a long time, Amy.
Yeah, but, so have I, Nick.
In the early 90s, touchscreens were being used primarily in the industrial marketplace, but they were hardly what we would consider today. And today, touchscreens are ubiquitous. You can't drive down the road. You can't check into a theater. You can't do anything without seeing a touchscreen. And I believe pretty much every man, woman, and child has a touchscreen in their pocket on their phone today. So been around touchscreens for a very long time in the industrial market as well as various other markets. And about 15 years ago, decided to zero back in on the industrial market. And that's what we've been doing since.
Wonderful. So as you outlined, I mean, touchscreens are everywhere. You know, it's kind of the consumerization of IT kind of bleeding into all sorts of industries as well as how we just function as individuals. So from your perspective, what are some of the ways that touchscreens are helping in manufacturing operations?
Right. So traditionally speaking, the manufacturing facilities have had an HMI, which is a human-machine interface. These have typically been run with proprietary software on proprietary platforms that were used primarily to control a PLC, programmable logic controller, which in turn was going to control an industrial pump, valve, robotics arms, various things like this. Over the last 10 to 15 years, manufacturing companies have begun to use complete touchscreen computers, as opposed to something proprietary designed for a point-to-point application. With that, full-fledged Windows as well as Android touchscreen computers have begun to crop up on the manufacturing floor. And of course, the software that's come along with that, couple of examples: manufacturing execution software, or MES, SCADA, supervisory control and data acquisition software, is allowing manufacturers of all sizes to take their data collection at the point of manufacture, which I like to refer to as the operator workstation, because that's where the work's actually taking place. So data is being collected right at the point of manufacture, which eliminates the potential for any error further down the line. You've got MES software, which can provide traceability and compliance. It gives the supervisors real-time inventory management, as well as quality management, because you've got instruction sets right at, again, the point of manufacture. So that's been taking place over the last 10 to 15 years, and it's continuing to grow as time goes by.
So when you're talking about manufacturers deploying new technologies, what is the learning curve like for deploying touchscreens in an actual shop environment?
Right, good question. One of the enormous advantages of utilizing a touchscreen is obviously the learning curve. The learning curve shrinks to virtually zero because the software can be designed such that a button can take care of any type of input that needs to take place. There's no more need for typing. There's no more need for understanding. A button can be created to literally activate anything and enter any type of data. So the learning curve is for all intents and purposes, cut to zero by deploying some of these systems.
Right. It's something that people are comfortable using in their everyday lives is now impacting their jobs, which is fantastic.
That's exactly correct.
Great. So I know that we can see examples of this and how large companies can benefit from touchscreen computers and screens. How specifically are small job shops benefiting without the ability to invest in large budgets? And what kinds of efficiencies can small shops glean without having to invest a lot?
Great question. The overwhelming number of folks that we deal with are actually small job shops. And I can tell you that they're benefiting greatly. Virtually all companies have some type of enterprise resource planning software in place. So by utilizing a full-fledged Windows or Android-based platform, the IT department of that company can simply mount a full-fledged computer at the point of manufacture, again, the operator station, connect it to the internal network, and that way the operator has direct access to all of the jobs that he's required to do. Currently, an operator in a small job shop might be running his CNC machine, and he creates 100 widgets. Now he's got to do his next job, so he's got to find his supervisor or someone with access to the ERP system in an office somewhere, print out the next job detail along with drawings so he can set up his tooling, which is going to be anywhere from a 20 to 100-page document, go back to his workstation and start to set things up. If his IT department simply deploys a full-fledged Windows-based computer at the point of manufacture, his workstation, connects it to the internal network, he's got direct access to any jobs that he needs to do, as well as any tooling directly on the screen right at his workstation. So companies of all sizes can absolutely benefit by deploying touchscreen computers in their shops.
And I know you mentioned, an IT department. Some of the shops I imagine you work with don't have, a standalone IT department. It's a lot of folks wear many hats. Is that an issue with this type of technology?
Actually, not at all. If they have any computers at all, they're running some type of a network, and simply putting another node on the network would be no different than having another node in the accounting department. The difference is going to be in the actual piece of equipment and its durability and suitability for being on a manufacturing floor as opposed to sitting in an accounting office.
I see. Yeah, that brings me to another question, about the types of requirements or specifics with their environment people should be thinking about when they're making decisions about these types of products and solutions and bringing them into their environment. So what are some of those things that people should to ask themselves and talk to you about?
Good question. So if you were to buy a Windows computer, it's a consumer-grade computer, okay? It's a fine machine, but it's designed to be used by the consumer in an office, a protected environment, we like to say, okay? And anybody that's ever opened up their laptop or their desktop computer after a couple of years can certainly see the buildup of dust inside of the machine, okay? That dust taxes the components heavier and in essence shortens the life of the machine, okay? And that's in a protected environment, an office or even a home, okay? You can imagine what a fan inside of a unit would do in a dirty shop or factory environment. So you want to make sure that what you're purchasing is designed with fanless processors. It's got to be a fanless unit. It eliminates sucking in all of the dust and grime that's going to shorten the life of the piece of equipment overall. So that's a very important feature when purchasing an industrialized touchscreen computer as opposed to a consumer grade. The next thing that folks might want to look for is the IP rating. It's in essence stands for Ingress Protection. So without going into the details, you have two numbers, okay? One of them is designed to protect against liquids. The other one is designed to protect against solid objects. So the higher the number, the better. Quite frankly, if you're purchasing something to be utilized in an industrial market, you want to have a minimum of an IP54 rating. We design units up to IP69, but an IP54 rating would be the minimum requirement I would suggest to anyone putting a piece of equipment into a shop or a factory.
Those are important details for people to understand. Let's talk a little bit about operating systems themselves, and specifically the Windows operating system. You know, over the years, this has sometimes been a point of contention with network administrators due to the overhead Windows carries with it. So talk to us a little bit about, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and, what's going on there.
Right. Yes. The network administrators pull their hair out with Windows updates, etc. Yes. So lo and behold, a handful of years ago, well, let me back up. I'm sure by now most folks have heard the acronym IoT. If you go down to the Best Buy, your refrigerator might be labeled IoT. So IoT, it stands for Internet of Things, and that loosely refers to the interconnectivity of various devices across the Internet, whether it's your refrigerator you're tapping into from your phone when you're at the grocery store, or equipment in a factory. So a handful of years ago, the really smart folks at Microsoft realized this interconnectivity needs to include our Windows machines. So what they did, they said, most of the industrial equipment is being utilized for it's a purpose-built machine, right? It's designed to be on a factory floor. People shouldn't be surfing the internet. People shouldn't be doing various crazy things while they're trying to work in the factory, right? So Microsoft came out with a scaled-down version of their operating system. Right now, they took Windows 10, they built a smaller, leaner operating system based on the Windows 10 kernel, so it's compatible with anything in the universe, obviously. However, they've taken out a lot of the background services that would typically run in an office computer. So that does a couple of things, right? It allows the hardware itself to run much more efficiently because the RAM and processing power are not being gobbled up by services running in the background that are not needed anyway. So Windows 10 IoT is what it's called. They also have Windows 11 IoT. And for all intents and purposes, they run as lean as an Android system. So, like I say, the really smart folks at Microsoft figured out a long time ago that they kind of needed to be ahead of the curve on this, and I give them credit because they figured out a way to do it. So all of those headaches tend to evaporate if you're utilizing the IoT version of Windows.
Yeah, it sounds like it simplifies things. There is a lot of clutter associated with those OSs, so that makes a ton of sense. But just to be clear, so machines that you all develop, they're not limited to Windows, the Windows operating system. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So here at Tech Industrial, we manufacture machines, again, designed specifically for the industrial marketplace. with regard to fanless processors, high IP ratings. But in addition to that, we recognize that there's a multitude of applications out there, and not everybody is going to be married to the Windows operating system. So we make units that will obviously run under Windows. We also have units that will run on an Android OS as well as Linux operating system. So we have to please our customers, and that's what we attempt to do.
So when you run into a shop or you're having conversations with people that are on the fence about deploying touchscreen technology, what are some of their concerns and how do you address those?
Right. Typically, as I said before, we tend to focus primarily on the small job shop type environment. We do have a lot of customers that are larger, but the small job shop are the folks we're really trying to help. And traditionally speaking, their complaint has been what we talked about at the beginning of this, which is cost factor involved with deploying a new MES or SCADA package and the training involved, et cetera. And so I simply explained to them, you can vastly improve your efficiency by giving your operator direct access to the data that they need right at his workstation. And you can do that today with one of our pieces of equipment. And as you grow and implement an MES or a SCADA package, you can also run that on the same equipment you're going to deploy today. So you can increase efficiency today, and as time goes by, continue to use that same equipment to further increase your efficiency when you do have the capital to invest in a MES or a SCADA package.
I mean, those are two of the North Stars, right? Increase efficiency and be able to scale with existing technology. So it sounds like a very smart investment. So we've covered a lot of ground today, Nick. What are you most looking forward to in the future? Is there anything coming down the pipeline that our listeners should be made aware of?
Truthfully, we try and stay on top of the curve with regard to new technologies all of the time. But our biggest focus is, and I know at this point I probably sound like a broken record, but our biggest focus is to help the small job shop. Because again, the large factories and manufacturers, while we can supply them equipment, they're at a different level, and they do have the capital, which is wonderful. But, our focus really is to help the small guy, and the more that we can increase our efficiency and create better, longer-lasting products for them, and we do that by staying on top of the technology curve, the better off we are and the better we feel about our mission.
Well, that certainly benefits your customers. Well, Nick Christie, I want to thank you so much for taking time to join us and sharing your insights with our listeners. And if people want to learn more about the work you and your team at TechVisions are doing and some of your products, where should they go?
Our website is tech-industrial.com. And I want to clarify something, Amy, if I could. Tech Industrial is actually a subsidiary of TechVisions. Now, TechVisions focuses on a variety of different industries, and we recognized a handful of years ago that a lot of our division's customers were getting a little confused when they went to our website. So we actually have our own website now, tek-industrial.com, and we would love to see you on our website, as well as many of the shows that we exhibit at, including Smart Manufacturing Experience coming up in Pittsburgh in June.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you again, Nick, and I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. Make sure to stay up to date about what's happening in advanced and smart manufacturing, and hear more podcasts by visiting us at advancedmanufacturing.org. Take care.